AM 590, KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Metro's only racing talk show. The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Buddy Ray.
Well, good morning, race fans, and welcome to the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. You may notice a little bit of a different sound in Buddy and I's voice for today. We are live, well, semi-live. We're recording like live at Quaker Steak Lube. We are here for the Playland Speedway Reunion Show at Quaker Steak Lube in Council Bluffs. The goal for today is to remember America's action track. And we want to say thank you to all of our fine sponsors that help bring us this. Kaziski Auto Parts, 51st and I Street in Omaha, online at kaziski.com. Also, Max I Walker, online at maxiwalker.com. Quaker Steak Lube in Council Bluffs. You can find them on Facebook, all the great specials they have going on throughout the year. And Joe's Karting, the ones that bring the Front Stretch to all of us each and every Sunday morning. Thank you so much to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. And I've got my co-host, Buddy Ray, here sitting next to me, ready to kick this whole thing off.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. You know, there's a lot of racers here from way back. I've been doing this thing now for 21 years driving, and, you know, I was just asking Stan here, is Kevin Wolf in the house? I remember my dad and we used to talk to Kevin Wolf a lot going over there to Bellevue, and I'm just so happy that everybody's out here. So
that's Buddy Ray, and also joining me to my right is Stan Cisar, announcer at Eagle Raceway, ASCS Midwest announcer, Nebraska 360s, and frankly, I mean, what don't you announce? You sing at your church choir.
I kind of cut back a little bit this year, but there was a time I was probably announcing 3-4 nights a week, and back before those days when my dad was flagging at tracks throughout the Midwest, I was tagging along, and I got to see an awful lot of good racing in a lot of years. So,
also joining us on the panel for turn number one, Wayne Cue, the man that helped set all of this up. Wayne, I owe you a lot. Thank you so much for organizing all of this and help, frankly, taking a lot off my plate. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and also mention that I am a retired one-time pit announcer at Crawford County Speedway.
I don't know if I actually talked to Crawford. We're not claiming you. Let's get this baby underway. Let's start telling some stories. First off, I know, Wayne, you wanted to kind of take it off. And when did Playland Speedway open up, and what got it opened up? What started this whole thing?
Abe Slusky comes along. Him and his brother, they had in previous years had a concession over at the old Krug Park out in Benson area. And then Krug Park kind of shut down, and Slusky come over here, and he purchased part of the land and he leased the other part to get somewhere around 60 acres. So he was trying to figure out what to do with the old grandstand, the track, so he starts out to believe it. Lynn Grable, sitting down at the table, will probably have to help me on this, because I believe it was 1947. They started out having midget races. They went over fairly well through the years. And then 1949, he wanted to kind of go into a different kind of racing, so they had what they called a jalopy race. This is where you knock the windows, you didn't even have to take the windows out of your car, bring it over and race it. Well, they had a few races, and what happened, they had a couple of incidents, without going into a lot of detail, but within about a 2 to 4 week period, they had 2 people that got killed. So boom, that took care of the 1949 race.
That'll end that real quick.
Yes, it did. Well, then Slusky, and he starts brainstorming. He was good. He was a carnival man, so he knew how to turn business around. So 1950, he come along and he said, let's start, if you want to call them hot rod races, coupes and sedans. What we know here, like this car, Buddy Ray, microphone broke, like the old coupe here, they started out in 1950 was their first racing season with them, and then that just kind of went right on up, carried through. The first track championship in 1950 was Tiny Lund.
I just want to take a break. I just want to point out, 6 minutes and 39 seconds it took Wayne to break another microphone.
I lost the pool, Wayne. I had 9 minutes.
Well, you got to know your betting. What's my average?
We had Wayne on the show, about a month and a half ago? It was back in August to announce the Playland Speedway Reunion Show, and he was 2 words into it, and he broke our microphone in the studio.
Let's don't forget Sunset.
There you go.
Broke a microphone at the
Boom
Sunset.
mic.
Oh, boy. All right. Sorry about that. Continue.
Oh, well.
So we're talking about, we had the hot rod races. Unfortunately, had a couple fatalities. Those cars were like the roadsters with no roll bars, no roll cage of any kind.
No Hans devices.
Pretty dangerous.
Did they wear helmets at all? Or was it just...
Yeah.
Leather football.
The old days.
No roll bars in that. But anyway, 1950 turned out to be a good year. The track was still dirt. And the kind of a Dale Swanson era, 51, 50, 51, and 52. Tiny Lund won it in 1950. He goes to the Air Force. Johnny Bucamp comes in and starts driving Tiny Lund's car, which was owned by Dale Swanson from Harlan, Iowa. Bucamp wins it in 51. There's a guy, Freddie Miller's not here, if he is, but anyway, Don Pash from Avoca, Iowa. He'd been racing other type of cars and that. Well, anyway, he wanted a new car, so Dale Swanson had two cars. He had a number 5 car and he had the number 55 that Bucamp was racing. So Don Pash bought the number 5 car and then painted it white, and he kept the number 5. Well, 1952, Don Pash wins the point champion. So you take 50, 51, 52, a Dale Swanson car won the first 3 races. That's just another Playland story. But Bud Burdick, the guy owned the track through the 50s up into the 60s. Stan can tell you many, many stories on Bud. I mean, we had just all kinds of drivers. A lot of drivers we don't even hear about. There's another guy out of Red Oak could just drive the wheels off a car. I mispronounce it every time, but I say Don Sattel. Don Sattel. From Red Oak. You had Kurt Lynn, Bobby Parker. I wish Dennis was here or Mike was here. Bobby started out, Lynn Grable will tell you this. I'm referring to Lynn right now because Bobby come to the area, he could drive anything.
We're going to get Lynn up on stage here in just a little bit, and we'll tell stories with Lynn Grable. And also Bill Rick and Rich Munson will join us too.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was surprised to find out, because a lot of people, if you guys listen to the show, you know that this is my going on my 3rd, almost 4th year being involved in dirt racing. So I'm the child of the group compared to all these guys. But I was kind of surprised to find out that Playland Speedway was an asphalt track. Was it always an asphalt track, or did it get converted at some point in time?
Actually, Playland did start out as a dirt track. Okay. And it was a dirt track for quite a number of years, and they asphalted it, I believe.
1954.
Okay.
Yeah. What was the reason behind asphalting it? It would seem it's a little bit more of a consistent
racing. This was another thinking of Abe Slusky. He was always thinking ahead, and everybody else had problem with rainouts.
Yeah.
And track prep.
We know that this year.
And so Abe just thought that would be one way of minimizing some expenses and that. Plus, it was just another different type of venue for racing in that. Mm-hmm. And Abe was offering some, fairly competitive purses at the time. And there were different incidents. Again, we don't have time for this, but there was different incidents that happened. Who was that, Stan? That Larry Morris, his car burned and that?
Larry Morton, his car burned. They passed the helmet, and even Abe Slusky come out and give him money on top of that, probably enough to buy another car in that. That's a story in its own. But from 1954 right on up to about 68 was about the tail end of the coupes and sedans, because even for Sunset, that was basically about their last year also. And then everybody was kind of migrating over to at Playland, it was mini stocks. It was in the early 70s, there was a Roadrunner class, a beginner class, which kind of graduated into a Bronco. And then from there, Playland they went into a super late model, and they more or less they were one of the first tracks to go with the big tire rule and that. So from there's many, many stories.
So
Wayne's got us in turn 4 already.
I tell you.
I'm telling you.
I just want to know how it all...
to victory lane already.
I want to know how it got started, and we're already talking about the end of it.
We're thinking about making a pit stop, I think.
Thank you.
It was more than just a racetrack, though. They really kind of, the owners, the guys who built it, made it into something more than just coming and watching racing, right?
Well, no. I mean, in the early years, their bread and butter, besides the racing, was an amusement park.
Yeah.
Previously, the Slusky family down in Houston, Texas, ironically had another amusement park down there called Playland Park, and it also had a racetrack. I don't know the whole history or what all went on down there, but I know that it did exist. So the amusement park, it went well over, I don't know what they had, 20, 30 amusement rides. The big thing was the roller coaster. It had, at the highest point, it was 60 foot high, 6-story building, and that was the first thing that opened. That opened right in 1948, and it lasted until right up to about 64 when the construction started. And that was kind of the downturn of Playland Park there. I'm going to go into this and I'll give it back to Stan or you guys. But 64 and 5, that's when the interstate come through, and they come by and they were supposed to take like 15 or 20 acres. They end up taking 40 out of the 60 acres. So basically, it just left the racetrack, the grandstand, a small area. They tried it for, I'm going to say just a number of years with smaller roller coaster like the Mouse or whatever it was.
The most important part, though, was the racetrack.
Yes, very much.
We'll continue to move along. Should we take a little bit of a break and get some of these drivers up here, Stan, or do you got more we can talk about for the opening?
That sounds great. Jerry Slusky is going to be in the house just a little bit later on. He was detained by an earlier commitment, but he's planning on coming by just a little bit later on, and he's probably going to be able to fill us in with a lot more of the details as far as how the Slusky family became involved and their involvement in the amusement park and the racetrack in Houston, Texas. Actually, a racetrack in Houston, Texas, where they owned. It's actually where A.J. Foyt got started racing down in Houston, Texas. Was the first place he raced was at Playland Park Speedway down there, and they did race some midgets and stuff like that up here, and I know Lynn might know a little about that. He can talk about that a little bit later on, but I'd say we move into the next turn and get a couple guys up here and start talking about the 50s.
We will do that. This is the Playland Reunion Speedway Show, brought to you by Kaziski Auto Parts, Joe's Karting and Council Bluffs, Quaker Steak and Lube, and Max I. Walker. Also, if you missed any of the action, if you weren't able to be here today while we were recording the show, thanks to Fuse Weekly and Donnie Jones for videotaping it. If you guys have been watching, you guys keep your eyes up in the skies. He's got that drone. Don't worry, we're not going to be doing any bombing. He's just doing some videoing of the whole thing, aerial shots. So go to Donnie Jones, go to their Facebook page, go to fuseweekly.com, and you can catch some awesome action that Donnie has put on. He recorded the action at Eagle Raceway at the end of September, the Nebraska Cup, and the Super Nationals, and did a terrific job. We'll be right back here on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting and Council Bluffs.
This is Andrew from Kaziski Auto Parts. Kaziski Auto Parts is an insurance-quality used parts supplier that can match your foreign or domestic car or truck needs. If you have a damaged or broke down car or truck, we guarantee a clean and quality part in next day fashion. Kaziski Auto Parts, your neighborhood premium recycle parts supplier. Call any Kaziski Auto Parts salesman today by dialing 402-731-4592 or visit us at 5040 I Street in Omaha. Kaziski Auto Parts, our quality used parts will match your car or truck's needs.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
We're working the high line into turn 2 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to turn number 2 on the front stretch, the special edition show, the Playland Speedway Tribute Show. We are joined on the panel by Lynn Grable, Rich Munson, and Bill Rick. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Stan, since you were there and you saw it all, you'd be best to kind of take this over for me and just kind of handle it for a little bit. So, Stan Cisar, take it away from me, bud.
I was there for part of that, and I know we visited just a little bit. I know Rich Munson was from South Omaha, and he knew about the whole South Omaha connection that raced over at Playland back in the 50s. Lynn Grable resided in Grand Island and raced over at Playland Speedway for a couple of years. And Bill Rick from Kennard, Nebraska, was the point champion over there in 1961, although he didn't race at Playland on a regular basis. He was a force to be reckoned with back in the coupe days out there, and you guys, kind of wanted to talk about the eras that you guys raced in and some of the competition you had over there and what was happening at Playland Speedway during those years. Lynn?
Well, I may be the oldest old-timer here. I'm in my 57th year of racing. I started when I was 17 back in the day, 1957. But going back to Playland, we lived in Harlan, Iowa when Playland first opened up. And my dad, being an ex-racer, took us over to Playland to watch the midgets. Bobby Parker was one of my heroes at the time because I believe he was a Harlan boy.
He's from Harlan.
And the roadsters, we did see the roadsters, but to be honest with you, I was only 8-9 years old. I don't know if we were there the night that the gentlemen were hurt. I didn't come along till 1958. My folks had moved us out to Nebraska. I was 17, like I said. One day I came home. Dad had an old 39 Ford Coupe sitting out in the front, and I said, "What's that for?" He says, "We're going to go stock car racing." Well, as it turned out, that was one race for me that year at a little track in Hastings, Nebraska. And the next year he said, "Let's go to Playland Park and race." I says, "You're on." So we had a 150-mile tow every week. And in those days, we didn't have trailers. We used tow bars. So if you can picture an old pickup truck pulling a 39 Ford Coupe on a tow bar going down the road, no interstate, that was us. But we did it every week. As luck would have it, I won the opening day feature that in 1958. And that was luck because that was only my second race. We raced there for a short period of time. One night I had to graduate from high school, so Dad towed it down and someone else drove it. Well, whoever drove it must have drove kind of aggressively, because the next week when I come back, some big dude, I think his name was John, come over and grabbed me by the arm. Now you got to remember, I only weighed about 130 pounds, and this guy had to weigh 210 or 220. It might have been. I don't know who it was to this day, but he took me over to his car and he showed me some pretty good dents. And he said, "I don't want that to ever happen again, or else," or words to that effect. And of course, I'm shaking. And I said, "Well, there's only one thing wrong with that. I wasn't driving last week." And he sort of apologized, and that was the end of it. I remember that pretty well. Other than that, I only raced there for a couple of months until an episode happened that we decided to leave the track. And that might be brought up later. If not, I'll bring it up at some point. So anyway, I drove there through the early part of '58. And we left and went on racing other places until 1962, when I believe there was a boycott of the track, and the track invited us folks that were racing at Capitol Beach in Lincoln at the time with our what we called super modifieds. They were overhead valve motors in coupes and sedans and cut down cars, to come over and run the annual Goodfellows race. We had pretty good luck that night, although in hot laps we lost a rocker arm tip, and we ended up making one out of a beer can and sprayed it on.
Wait a minute. What kind of beer? What beer?
I don't remember.
Falstaff.
Probably Falstaff.
A good quality beer can, then, apparently.
Well, it had to be good beer. It was in the pits, wasn't it?
Only the best for these drivers.
Smuggled in.
Anyway, we got it fixed, and as luck turned out, I won the race that night, and in my sedan. I don't have many memorabilia from there, but there's some over on the table we're sitting at, and there's a picture of the sedan that I had built that I drove that year. The one thing that I do remember was that when I opened up the loud pedal on that 390-inch Cadillac, it would light those slick tires up the full length of the chute and all through the corners, to the point that it was just like a smoke bomb. Anyway, that's about the extent of my memories of Playland Park.
Talk about, did you race back when they originated the old Playland 300 race, where they had two cars on a team? Were you ever involved in one of those?
No, was not.
It wasn't. I know they started that back in the coupe days, and used to see a lot of visitors come in from out west. I know Willie Heckey and Cliff Seelock came down one year, and I remember them coming in beating all the local guys, and that was something that was just about unheard of, to come down and beat Burdick and those guys in their backyard. But
well, see, those are two of my peers from when I was racing in central Nebraska, and now that you bring up those times, both Tiny Lund and Johnny Bucamp are from my hometown. Tiny gave me my first ride on a motorcycle when I was about 8 years old. I was having a scuffle with one of my neighborhood friends. I guess he was a friend. Tiny thought I won, so he says, "Come on, Lynn, get on and I'll give you a ride." And he took me all around town on that big old Harley Davidson. I'll never forget that. And if you can picture me 8 years old, and if you ever met Tiny, Tiny wasn't tiny. He was just a giant of a man.
I'll tell you another guy that raced back over there, and he was part of that South Omaha connection, Rich Munson. Rich, talk about the racing back in the 50s and back in the coupes over at Playland Speedway.
Well, it was cheaper back then. Of course, you didn't have any money anyway. But my favorite story is the first car I had, I went to a junkyard, bought a 39 Ford Coupe, and $35. So I took it home, nice looking car, took it home, ripped all the fenders off, tore it all apart, put roll bars in it, and the neighbors thought I was nuts, which they were right. You know, never given a thought that this thing would be worth $35,000, you know, years later. I just wanted to go in a circle and have a good time, and I did. But talking about Wilbert Hecht, I have one story. I was having a 50-lapper at Playland, and I got the lead. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, Wyman passed me about 4 laps into it. And then about 3 laps later, Wyman, he lost his drive shaft, so I get the lead back. So about 15th lap, Wilbert passed me. So about the 20th lap, I get the move over flag. I knew I was running second. But here come Mighty Mouse around one more time. So that it was not a good night. I finished back. Other than that, it was fun though.
Well, things started out pretty good for you anyway. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that was good, yeah.
Talk about some of the other different drivers that you raced against back in the days over there.
Oh, Jim Vanna, Don Pash, Bob Parker. Oh, let me think. Jeez, there was a lot of good drivers. It was tough. It was a tough deal.
Lynn, can you tell us the story? We'll back up to you a little bit. And do you have a favorite memory of Playland Speedway?
Well, I just had one that just went out the window. It must be my age. Give me a minute and it'll come back.
Well, slide on down to the end of the panel. Bill Rick from Kenner down there. You know, of course, you raced for quite a number of years all over, you know, and racing at Sunset Speedway up at Arlington, the different tracks around the area. Most of those dirt tracks, what did you think when you got over to Playland racing on the asphalt?
It was interesting. We got over there, and it was always smooth. It was never slick, and but I don't really understand how I got over there. It was different because I was a dirt driver, and I started over in Arlington in 1954, June 20th. Never forget it. And how I ended up at Playland. Bud Burdick was my big fan, and. You want to come with something that I did that I really got thrilled, and I passed him one night in the feature, and boy, that was a thrill. But you take Don Pash, and I didn't run against Bob Kazicki, but Dan was over there, and that asphalt was fun to run on, except it took a different set of tires.
Yep.
And I don't know, after I was top driver in '61, boy, I lost my mind where I went then. There was an argument over money, I know that. And Sunset paid $200 more, and I went to Sunset.
Well, I know they talked about back in the old days, they had the Midwest Stock Car Racing Association, and it was kind of a group of the drivers. Everybody got together, and they tried to keep the rules very similar. And you talk about the purse money, and evidently there was a little discussion about the purses, and they didn't want to come up with the extra money, so you guys decided to go elsewhere. And that was just about the beginning of the end, I think, of the Coops over there.
Yeah.
Back in those days, is that right?
Yeah.
Right. But it was a fun track, and Abe Slutsky, I got along with him very good, because if you happen to scratch a paint or something and had a problem, he slipped you $20. Yeah, he knew how to do that.
Well, he was a promoter.
Oh yeah.
You know.
I've got one more here. I recall when I raced there that they had standing starts, and generally there was 20 to 24 cars to start in an A feature, which meant the front row was at the flag stand and the back row was clear around on the back stretch. And by the time when they threw the flag to go, by the time you got going in the back row, which is where I usually was, the front row had already on your tail getting ready to pass you. And what brought that to mind was when we watched the races there in the early 50s when Tiny was running. One night he must have been especially aggressive because they called him up to the flag stand to, I suppose, penalize him. And on his way out, the crowd booed him, and I'd never heard such booing. And Tiny, and you have to know Tiny, just turned to the crowd and gave him his most favorite signal all the way out to the stands. And I will not forget that either.
Was that you guys were all number one?
Yeah.
Everybody's number one.
Number one.
Bill, Rick, do you have a favorite story down at Playland Speedway you can tell us?
Well, not really. My favorite story is when I passed Bud Burdick on the inside in turn 4. And won the feature. And Wilbur Hecht, I never run against Wilbur.
I did.
He outrun them guys. But old Don Pash was just plenty tough, and Glenn Roby, and Bud Aikenhead, and there was
Pete Huffman.
I had a good time there, but I didn't run there that much.
Stan, anything else we need to cover before we dismiss these gentlemen?
That's about it. I don't know, you're talking about racing on the asphalt. I know, Bill, later on, then going into later years, you did a lot of asphalt racing back when you got into the late models. I know you raced at I-70 Speedway on the half-mile asphalt down there. You picked up a big win, raced it, in Milwaukee, Minnesota State Fair and stuff when you were racing with USAC and that. Did racing over the asphalt back in the 60s, did that kind of give you a little heads up moving into asphalt against guys that have been racing at asphalt their whole careers?
Well, that asphalt was a very interesting race. You had to know what you was doing there. You couldn't be a flat footer, and you couldn't just up and jump on the foot feet. You had to be just smooth as heck and steer very good. But it was fast, and if you made a mistake, you really paid for it. But other than that, I had good times. I had a lot of good chances or good times on asphalt.
Talk to me about the safer the walls there when you did make a mistake. Today we have the Armco barriers, or we have the concrete walls that kind of keep you in. What did you guys have at Playland Speedway back then?
Them concrete walls, when you hit them, they're dusty. You can't believe how much dust comes in there. I did that up in Milwaukee. I backed it down the outside wall and turned 3. And I was probably running about 110, 15, and you'd be surprised what happened. I broke a drive shaft, and I couldn't see nothing. It was dusty.
If you guys have a question for Lynn, Rich, or Bill, come on up. We've got a microphone right in front of the stand here. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you have a question you want to ask some of these guys, we'd love to talk to you. What do you got there?
I'm Tom Kulkarni. I'm an SOB from South Omaha. My parents grew up. And I'm a real good friend of Bud Burdick's. One small story, probably the last good story I heard, when he was up at the home, he says, and I knew Bud flew an airplane. And he says, well, you should have been there the day I landed my airplane on L Street. He landed it down on 43rd and L and parked in Roy's driveway because Roy had a home there about 45th. So.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll get some of these audio issues fixed, and we'll be right back. This is The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com.
Max I Walker has been providing great service to the Omaha area for nearly 100 years. With 23 convenient locations, it's easy to find a Max I Walker near you. From dry cleaning to laundry to uniform rentals, Max I Walker is here to make sure you look your best. Max I Walker has been a proud supporter of local dirt track racing since 1974. From Sunset Speedway to Adams County Speedway and legends of the dirt like Dave Chase, Glenn Roby, Ron Tilley, and so many more. Give Max I Walker a call today or head to maxiwalker.com.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
Time to grab another tear-off and make your move. We're headed into Turn 3 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Playland Speedway Reunion Show. Heading into turn number 3, brought to you by Max I Walker. Find them online, maxiwalker.com. Thank you to Max I Walker for supporting the Playland Speedway Reunion Show here at Quaker Steak Lube in Council Bluffs. As we have been doing, we were telling stories from Playland Speedway, and just taking a little walk down Playland Speedway memory lane. And Stan, you've been kind of heading it up, so if you would, please take it away. We got a whole new panel of drivers.
We got a new panel of drivers back after the interstate construction. They got Playland Speedway back up and running. Lau Klein and Jerry Slusky started a whole new era over at Playland Speedway called the Bronco Division. Basically, what that was kind of a street stock type late model car. And all these guys sitting here to my right were pretty heavily involved back in those years. Sitting right next to me, the guy that drove the number 56, Ron Tilley. Next to him was number 16, Don Brown. And right next to him, Ed Morris in the 78. And over on the end, Bob Johnson in car number 1. Glad to have all you guys over here.
Thanks. Yes, it's nice.
Oh,
I just wanted to say how much fun it is to be here and talk with all the guys that I'm familiar with, and some of them I can't remember. But that's my age, so...
The classic was Tilly's sitting up here next to me, and Don Brown sits down. He says, well, I don't want to sit next to him. He used to run into me all the time. And I can't imagine that ever happening.
That's a true story.
Well, you didn't see him coming, right? Okay. But I tell you what, talk just a little bit about this, how this whole thing got started. Ron and Bob, didn't you guys share a car when you first got going?
That's right, we did. We started together. Oh, golly. What year was that, Ron?
It must have been about 69.
68?
Okay, yeah. 68, 69.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to arguing about who was going to drive. And so we just decided, well, we better get our own cars. So we did. Separated, and of course Ron went on to be a very good race car driver and won some championships, and that's about how we got started, Ron and myself.
Yeah. And of course Don Brown, all you guys from Council Bluffs, and it was kind of neat being able to ride your Playland was pretty much your home track, and it got your racing career started.
Yeah, we even drove our cars to the track several times.
Well, I remember seeing Ed Morris's car rolling back through coming up the back roads, a couple spare tires and a toolbox in the back window, and off you came. You guys jump in anytime, whenever you want to add something. Ed, Don?
Go ahead, Ed.
Those years were great. What we got to remember is that in 1968, and I got out one of my books, 12/31, Christmas Eve on a Tuesday, Jerry Selesky, track owner, had this new deal going for the Bronco cars. You had about 2-3 days to register that week of Christmas for the next season. I go down there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is Christmas Eve, and sign up. I was 338th to sign up. It wound up somewhere close, well over 500 for the first sign up for that next season.
What year was that again?
That would have been, we signed up in 68.
Wow.
Yeah, for the Bronco class. Okay, and you got your little card that Jerry gave everybody. And if you guys remember, there would be 10, 12 heats. You'd have A, B, C, and D, E features.
Yep.
So you would have 500 cars on any given night in that infield. And with 500 cars, we all remember the drama. You did not get out of your car when you got back after the race is over, because your crew's in the stands. It took them forever to get back. If you got out of the car, hard telling what was waiting for you, and it probably wasn't good. There was a lot of drama when the races were over.
That's when I talked to Don just a little bit earlier, and I said, we used to go over there every Saturday night for the fights, and every once in a while a race would break out.
That's exactly right. That's the way it was.
Of course, you guys were never involved in any of that, were you, Don or Ron?
No.
I never participated in any extra.
No.
I was just forced into it.
I remember I recruited Ronnie Standard before he was the butcher.
Yeah, he's out here. We're gonna talk to him a little bit later. But yeah, talk about the cars. Talk about how what gave you guys the interest into wanting to get into circle track racing.
Well, I think that we all were the age. We watched the Ricks, everybody you talked about earlier, the Lunds and the Bocamps and Bobby Parker. Playland was so super. It put a show on, and when you could get 4,000 and 5,000 people every week in, week out, it was a show that was unbelievable. You had the best announcers. I mean, you had Lee Barron, you had George Murphy, Joe Patrick. I mean, we had all-star wrestling there. I remember seeing Vern Gagne wrestle. I mean, Playland was just super. It just had that personality. And again, drama every night in the infield, on the track. You'd get out of the car and somebody's girlfriend, if you bent their fender in, she'd come up and slap you. I mean, it's just what happened. It was crazy, but it was crazy fun. But it wasn't that serious. It was so much fun. It was adrenaline high. you couldn't wait to get back to the next Saturday night.
And everybody'd have a beer after the races were over and laugh about it.
Well, maybe the next day.
Okay.
Buy a beer to make up for what you did the night before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk just a little bit about the cars. You know, we back in those days, probably the 55 through 57 Chevy was the car of choice, and everybody sitting up here had one of those cars. And talk a little bit about what you used to do to the cars back in those days.
Actually, back in those days, you could do it fairly simple and not too much money and make a few dollars. And we went on to build better cars with the money we made and moved on to different tracks.
Hold on, what's this concept of making money in racing?
Well, that happened until about the mid-'70s.
Buddy, you ever heard of this concept of making money in racing?
Foreign to me.
Buddy's keeping the wall building, the guys who build the concrete walls, he's keeping them in business.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Talk about, maybe your favorite Playland moment or your most memorable Playland moment, and talk about some of your competitors. Who was the toughest guys to race against? And start down on that end, Bob, and work your way over.
Well, the one thing that sticks in my mind, my younger brother was racing at the same time I was. And in one particular race, he started up in the front row and I was in the back. In the very first turn, he got turned around, and I hit him head on.
Not so good.
Not so good.
How was Thanksgiving that year?
How was Thanksgiving?
How was Thanksgiving? Were you still speaking at Thanksgiving dinner?
Well, he's passed away.
You guys made up after that, though?
Oh, yeah. That was, it was common, you were wrecking all the time.
Mm-hmm. Ed?
I remember, again, Playland was so much drama. We had, I think we only had 2 of them, or maybe 3. Ron can help me, of those 300 lappers. Mm-hmm. And if anybody could remember that was unbelievable, that thing. We'd never done anything like that before.
Talking about the 300 lap races, actually there was 2 cars. You had a teammate, and only 1 car out there on the track at a time, and you would race, and when you pulled into the pit area, your team car could pull back out onto the track, so you could refuel, change tires, do whatever needed to be done. Talk about your experiences in those.
I remember I was teamed with Wally Niss, and he was in the top 20 of the points, and I was at the bottom 20. And of course, Wally took off. He ran 10 laps, lost his right front tire, and went in the wall, and I ran the final 290 laps.
How did maybe you guys can help me, because I've been fascinated with this story since you talked about it, Stan. The layout of Playland Speedway, how did you guys not get into accidents when you were essentially tag teaming coming on and off the track?
Well, basically, you went off the track in one corner and you came on the track down the backstretch off another corner. It was really set up pretty good for that type of event. You could go right into the pits off of turn 1 and come out of the pits in turn 2. Very, very similar to the way it's set up at Eagle Raceway. But the 300 lap races, you had Wally Nissen as a partner. I think, were you guys partners one time, Bob and Ron? Or,
oh yeah.
I had my brother-in-law, Dave Blowers, as a partner.
Yeah.
And that particular year, we won it and made the most money we ever seen. It was like $1,200 to win the feature.
And Don, when you were in the 300 lap, were you partners with your brother?
No, I was with Roy Robinson.
Okay.
He drove a Plymouth. I can't remember what year it was.
Valiant.
Yeah. And I think, I believe then, I don't know if it was I had a Ford the first year I raced. It was a 54 with a 429, I believe it was in it. And I think that was the year that Roy blew the rear end out of his car, and I run most of the race myself.
Uh-huh.
But
I know the 300 lap races. I believe Paul won one, Ron one of those. I know Bob Jura and John Ernest won a couple of years in a row. I believe those guys had a pretty good team going for a couple of years, and that was always a fun event, something that I think the fans always look forward to every year. Right? Right.
Oh yeah, that was great. And again, we're talking about when we went into the Bronco Series, the new names and talents that came out of that. New racers that went on and stayed and still racing, maybe not today, but you know, you had the Dave Chases that went on and had great careers in dirt. And then you got to remember, when we were at Playland, there was one guy that we all came there to try and beat.
Yep.
And it was Classy Paul Sedan.
Yeah.
And he's not with us today, but that was a guy that we all went to try and beat. This guy he took care of business week after week, and it took a long time to get where we could get a shot at him.
And I'll tell you what, one of his biggest rivals sitting right next to me, and who can forget the battles that you guys used to put on over there, Tilly and Sedan going at it on Saturday night.
Oh, absolutely.
That was like the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the
was
the white hats and the black hats, and the most amazing thing, and I guess I got to say this, is Ron's grandson is racing now, and you knew this was coming, didn't you? Okay. Ron's grandson is racing right now. Ron always was number 56, had some great sponsors. Lloyd helped you for a number of years. And then, of course, Rob and Bob Walker with Max I. Walker, one of your good sponsors that you took even into the dirt track racing days. But your grandson, Andrew, is now racing. And your car was always number 56 for quite a number of years. And Andrew's racing now. And tell him about Andrew's car. He's racing a red car.
He's racing a red car with number 10.
Number 10 on it, and we keep kidding you about that, calling it the Paul Sedan tribute car. And I tell you what, that's something that he's doing a great job. His first year of racing out there in the crate late model division down at I-80 Speedway, and I know you're real proud of him and put a lot of work in on that car. And I guess and Don, I don't know about, but I know Ed's son is raced. Bob's son is still racing. It's the kind of thing that once, myself I guess included, once you get into that racing deal, it kind of gets in your blood, and it's kind of a family tradition that goes ahead on,
Yep.
My wife wasn't really for it, but we decided it was okay, so we went ahead and tried this year. We'll probably come back next year and do a little better.
That's what I'm thinking. You'll probably come back, because once you get started, you don't quit. And I know Bob's son's still racing, in the modified division, and Chris raced for quite a number of years. Now you guys got plenty of stuff over here at Quaker Steak Lube to keep you busy. Right, Ed?
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I'm really fascinated with the asphalt aspect of it. Was it hard transferring back and forth? Was there another dirt track you guys went and raced out on the same weekend that it was kind of hard to transfer back and forth between two different style of racetracks?
Well, as I recall it, I don't think there was another track racing at the same time. I know we were waiting each week to get to the racetrack, but at that time when we first started, we weren't able to do a lot of traveling. We just had a car that, like I said earlier, half the time we drove to the racetrack. And as years passed, there was other opportunities that we could go to other tracks and have some fun. But that didn't come right away.
Yeah, I think back in those days when they first started that deal out, they were still racing only the coupes, like out at Sunset. Once they finally got into the late model division, they started that sportsman class, and some of you guys start venturing out onto the dirt, and then just kept the racing bug going from there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember we would take the car we'd won one year with Larry Kelly, the 2-car, over to Sunset. It couldn't get out of its own way. We would win a feature at Playland and go over there, and it'd be tough to make the A feature. It just didn't work out. Then back to Playland, we finally moved into those big tires.
Then we
picked some speed up. And I believe we were making, I know Ron was, I think Wally, I don't know if I ever got that fast. These guys are making 13-second rounds. That's pretty good around a little place like that.
Yeah, talk about the transition. Also, so the Bronco class, it progressed from the first year, took off like wildfire, and they had so many cars. They tried to keep the rules down to where you could limited modifications to the cars to keep it real affordable, but everybody wants to go a little bit faster. So pretty soon we start adding the big tires. We start with the big tires. You could hook up all that horsepower, so then we start putting bigger engines in and more horsepower. Talk about the transition from the Bronco division up into that super class. And Don, you're sitting there. You went from the 57 or 56 Chevy to the Chevelle. When you guys had the Chevelle with the big block in it, and Ron, you had Chevelles with big block. Ed still had the 55 Chevy with the big wide tires, the IndyCar tires on it.
Yeah, we had the old car with the bigger motor and the big tires.
Talk about just a little bit about
it
the
was
transition of the cars.
We never quite understood it and never really did hold of it. We couldn't get it. We could get a good right rear tire and run really well, but the speed just wasn't there. We didn't have it for some reason. I think it was just the old car. I'm not sure what it was, but Ron had a lot of success with it and with his Chevelles. And
we cheated. We bought the first set of tires, and it took 3 weeks for everyone else to get them.
To find them, yeah. and I remember that is true. And there was a warehouse full of them downtown Omaha, and they were ex-IndyCar tires that somebody had bought on a closeout that they weren't using anymore, and found a home for them over at Playland Speedway. Yep. Right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. That was some.
And then Lyle Klein got in the middle of it.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother story, but...
well, Stan, should we take a break and we'll come back and wrap it all up in turn 4?
Take a break, talk to these guys. Glad to have you guys out. Good to see all the old faces again. Bob Johnson, Ed Morris, Don Brown, Ron Tilley. Give them a round of applause.
We'll be back in turn number 4 to wrap it all up. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
We have all been there before. Broken car part in your hand and some snot-nosed punk behind the counter has no idea what he is talking about, but he guarantees that this part will fix your car. You pay an arm and a leg for the replacement, get it home, and sure enough, it doesn't fit your car. Now, learn from your mistake and give an experienced salesperson at Kasiski Auto Parts a call today at 402-731-4592. Kasiski Auto Parts will get you back on the road with your arms and legs still attached.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
Get ready for the victory lap as we make our way into turn 4 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Just about ready to wrap this baby up, heading into turn number 4 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. If you happen to miss any of the show today, head to the Joe's Karting YouTube page. We'll have the video for the Playland Speedway Reunion Show posted on the Joe's Karting page, courtesy of Fuse Weekly. And thank you so much to Donnie for coming down and setting up. Thank you so much to everybody for helping out. Stan, we've got a new group of guys up here. They're going to help wrap up this show and then help start the next show. So Stan, take it away if you would.
Well, I'll tell you what, we ended up in turn number 3. We were talking to the guys and talked about the beginning of the Bronco division over there, and Ed Morris still with us up here on the panel. We also got Sonny Miller. I can remember his first race car, a 58 Chevy, had the 348, the big engine in it. And talk about your memories of Playland Speedway and the original Bronco division, then later on had a Camaro, moved up through the classes like the rest of the guys did. Sonny?
I'll tell you what, my fondest memory was the first A feature I won. I couldn't wait to buy about 6 nonpareil newspapers to read about myself. I buy me 6 newspapers, and I look back there in the car section. It says Underdog wins Playland Speedway A feature.
That was you.
That was me. I thought, yeah. Then next week it says Eddie Morris. I don't know why they couldn't use my name.
Maybe they didn't know your name when they were writing the article.
Oh, I was new, I'll tell you that.
That had to have been George Murphy.
Talk about the cars back in those days. We touched on it just a little bit. The diversity of cars. You know, we saw everybody running from the 55 to 57 Chevys. You had a 58 Chevy. We saw Fords. We saw Plymouth Valiant, Studebaker Larks were over there. We even had a Volkswagen over there at one time with a 348 in it, Larry Jisker's car. But
right.
talk a little bit about the cars, and that was back in the days when you should pretty much did everything yourself.
Yeah, Larry Dreska had that 58 Chevy. Volkswagen, the 348. That 58 Chevy I had was it was suicidal. For roll bars, it had drive shafts. that big motor always heated up. So in the back of my seat, I had a 30-gallon water tank with 2 nozzles on it. During the race, the car would get hot, and I'd have to reach back and turn on the water so it'd run back through the radiator. And another 4 or 5 laps, that old drum back there would be jumping up and down because it was boiling too. It was hot, so it was actually suicidal car.
Jerry, did you know anything about what these guys were putting in those cars? From a legal standpoint?
No, but if I had known, we would have changed things.
But I tell you what, the ingenuity, like you're talking about, that's one of the things I think that made it fun back in those days. The rules were pretty loose those first few years, and the guys that they could do whatever to the best of their ability to get those cars to go around that tight little fifth-mile asphalt track.
That old car bought groceries. Sure did. Yeah.
Ned, we talked about your cars. You stayed with that 55 Chevy for quite a number of years. Was that the same car all those years,
no,
or did you go through two or
50? Actually, it was
56?
3 cars. There was 3 cars involved. There was 2 56s and 1 55, and of course we tore the hell out of them. But you just rebuild them and come back the next week. And Jerry paid so well. We always got nice paychecks in the pay window. So, hell, we could afford to buy sheet metal and come back, and it was a good deal.
Am I sensing sarcasm?
It was the best paying track around.
Not too shabby. Actually, Ron was up here talking a little bit earlier about how much money they made racing back in those days, only because it didn't cost as much to race back in those days.
That's exactly right.
And I think everybody had just as much fun as they do now.
We had $350, $500 cars, and we had a blast with them. And when Jerry came, I think he just got out of law school, showed up at the racetrack. We didn't know who he was, and he didn't know who we were, but we all got to know each other real quick because nobody liked his scoring. He never understood who got first, second, third, fourth. They could never keep that straight.
Jerry, you want to defend yourself at all here?
Yes, I do.
You're getting thrown under the bus.
We actually had a certified scoring system that my dad checked out every night, and I always felt good about a payoff because I knew that every number that we had put down as far as laps and where a person placed was absolutely accurate. And until we got a person to the window, a driver to the window, and we said, well, nice going, Bill, you were third place. He always said, what do you mean third place? I was second. And then the fights and sort of things would start. And that's why, and I'm going to get to this story later, you probably remember, but Ron Stander was put on the payroll in 1978 or 9 to protect me because I always felt like at any time one of you guys was going to come slugging.
You needed a bodyguard at one point?
Big-time bodyguard.
What was this certified scoring system you guys had back then?
It was those guys in the white shirts that sat up in the box. And similar to you fellas who drove and were in the pits, those guys had a cooler of beer also. And so by the time the feature race came about, you couldn't believe anything they wrote down. And so I'm not surprised at all that some of you complained about where you placed.
So we could have won more features.
I think there's drivers today that say there's still a bunch of guys up in the booth drinking. So that argument with the invention of transponders still hasn't finished.
I think this is like Paul Harvey. The rest of the story now is coming out.
I got a ton of the rest of the stories for you.
Well, we love to hear them. That's what we're here for.
We got a couple turns coming up, and we'll be glad to listen to a lot more stories. Great to have you, Jerry, in the house with us today, and I know we're going to share a lot more stories as we get into the different turns on the different segments of the show. But talk a little bit about how you guys came up with the brainstorm to start this new division of cars, and how did you know, or did you know, it was going to be such a big success?
Yeah, it's a great question. In 75 and 6. Am I wrong on that?
65.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a decade off, fellas. I'm sorry. Boy, we are up in our years, Ed and Sonny. I think all of the guys at Playland were about the same age, by the way, and kind of grew up together. We were all in our early 20s, weren't we? Yeah. Anyway, it was clear in the mid-'60s that the those cars right there were starting to wane and were awfully expensive. I was introduced to Lyle by my brother, who owned, you'll remember, KRCB in Council Bluffs. And I have to attribute this to Lyle. He said, we've got to find a way to get a cheaper class of racing. And we did do some research around the country and found that this claiming was the single greatest way to keep everyone so-called honest with this. And we didn't really know what we were doing, and I think a lot of you have heard this story, but we started out the first night in May in 67, right? Ed?
Could be right, yep.
And we had 9 or 10 cars.
Here goes one now.
I think that was one taken off.
And if you thought we were able to mix it up when we had 100-some cars and have umpteen different races and styles and this and that, we were able to take, let's say, 10 cars and run, believe it or not, 3 heats, 2 features, and a trophy dash. And God bless the people in the grandstand. They thought that was absolutely outstanding. And everybody had so much fun that first night. The next week we had like 15, and the rest of the story, of course, is that by the end of the season, we had 110 or 15 cars signing into the pits in August. It was truly one of the most dramatic events, changes I've ever seen. But when you hit the market that people were looking for, to have some fun, exercise their mechanical ability, paint up their cars, get some sponsors, bring the families out, and I think the families were a huge part of it. It just built, and it stayed built for several years.
Yes, you're right. The family part was really good. Everybody brought their kids. It was a family event.
Yeah, it truly was family. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know where we're at as far as into our next segment, but we'll come back. We're going to talk a lot more about the history, and we're going to get into the later years. But
we'll end the show today. We thank everybody for joining us this morning on the Front Stretch. Join us next weekend as we wrap up hour number 2, when we tell so many more stories here for the Playland Speedway Reunion Show. Thank you to everybody for coming out. Stick around. We'll do hour number 2 here in a few minutes. Thanks. This is the Front Stretch, brought to you by Joe's Karting and Council Bluffs, online on AM 590 Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Okay. Max I. Walker has been providing great service to the Omaha area for nearly 100 years. With 23 convenient locations, it's easy to find a Max I. Walker near you. From dry cleaning to laundry to uniform rentals, Max I. Walker is here to make sure you look your best. Max I. Walker has been a proud supporter of local dirt track racing since 1974. From Sunset Speedway to Adams County Speedway and legends of the dirt like Dave Chase, Glenn Roby, Ron Tilley, and so many more. Give Max I. Walker a call today or head to maxiwalker.com.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.